Let's compare closed hole flutes with open hole flutes. Hi, I'm a music teacher and this is my life. Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and welcome for those of you who might be new here. In last week's video, I compared the differences between an offset G flute and an inline G flute. Well, in today's video, I'm going to also be comparing the differences between a closed hole flute and an open hole flute. I have one of each in front of me, but before we get started, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so that you never miss another video. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the closed hole flute. The one I have in front of me is a Prelude by Selmer, and this is a pretty good beginner or student model flute. This is the one I played in high school. Now, simply put, closed hole flutes are just flutes where all of the keys are solid metal. You cannot see through any of them, and so all of the tone holes, when played, are going to be closed. The reason why you're going to see this on a lot of beginner model flutes is because, as we all know, one of the hardest things about starting with the flute is getting a sound out of it. Once you get a sound out of the head joint, and I talked about that a couple of weeks ago in my 5 common beginner mistakes and how to fix it video, you need to be able to get a sound from the head joint first and then put it on the body. But open hole flutes present a little bit more of a challenge. So if you're someone who's maybe a new flute player, or if you're borrowing one from your school, then you're probably going to see one like this. So when you're holding the flute up, we all know that, again, beginner flute players' challenge is to balance it on their hand and their face and just their thumb. So what we're going to be doing here is, if I play a simple scale, the sound is pretty clear. And if my fingers aren't all in the perfect spot, then that's okay, because I could touch this key from here, I could play the key from here, I could play the key from here. As long as I'm hitting the right key at the right time, I'm going to get the right notes out. So that's one of the easier features of a closed hole flute, is it's just easier to play and perfect for beginners. Now I'm going to talk about the open hole flute. The one that I have in front of me is the Yamaha 481. This is the flute that I got right when I started university, but I actually auditioned on the closed hole flute that you saw. So in last week's video, I shared with you the differences between the inline and offset G flutes. But now, as you can see, this flute has some open holes in it. There are 5 keys on my flute that have the potential to have open holes. I'm going to talk about this one in just a little bit, but you can see through the keys that have those open holes. And one of the big advantages to having this is that the flute in general sounds a little bit more resonant. So I'm going to play that same G scale up and down the octave without vibrato as similarly as possible as the way I played it on my other flute. I don't have to work nearly as hard to get a really full sound out of the flute, and a big part of that is the fact that it's open hole. Among some other technical features, because this instrument cost at least 3 times as much as my other one, but the open hole flute definitely has some resonance advantages. Some of the challenges that come with playing an open hole flute is that if you are switching from a closed hole flute to an open hole flute, you need to make sure that you completely cover those open holes in order for the note to speak. So for example, if I were to play a G, where I have 2 open hole keys there, if I were to only partially cover one of those, it would sound something like this. So you can hear that if my fingers are even off just a little bit so that the air can escape through the tone hole, I'm not going to get the note G that I want. And the same thing goes if you are not fully covering any one of these keys with your right hand either. So one of the best ways that you can gradually get used to having an open hole flute is by purchasing plugs and practicing with them and gradually removing them over time. Some are made of metal. The ones that I purchased back in the day were made of rubber. So I actually have one in this key right here. And the reason why I still have it is, as I was trying to remove the plugs, for some reason that was the one key that I wasn't able to completely seal off with my finger when playing the flute. All of the others are gone. what I'd like you to do is, if you're someone who's trying to get used to an open hole flute, if you have plugs at home, go get them, pause the video, and then play again. But you want to make sure that you're putting the plug in the key in a way that does not create any type of bump on the key, meaning all three of these keys in your right hand, or if you're using the plugs in your left hand keys, they should all feel exactly the same, so that if you had your eyes closed and someone handed you the flute, you wouldn't be able to tell if there were plugs in it or not. And when I first started with plugs, I actually had it so that there was a little bump over the key. But my flute teacher actually told me that if you're able to push the plug almost all the way through, you don't want to poke all the way, you don't want to poke the plug all the way through the hole, then it falls out and then you have an open hole key again. But it helps your fingers to feel where those circles are in the keys. And if I actually hold the flute for a while and then lift my fingers, you can kind of see those circular shapes that end up being made on my fingers. But it gets your hand to really practice feeling where exactly they're supposed to be on the flute. So now I can play the flute with 4 out of the 5 tone holes open. Now, gradually over time, maybe during your warm-ups when you're practicing, what you can try is gradually start with one plug at a time. Maybe you start with this plug, for example. What you can do is you can poke through there with like a little pencil or something. The plug will fall down the bottom of the flute, so make sure that you're ready to catch it. And then really focus on making sure that you are covering that key with your finger. And then if that feels comfortable and you have some success with that, then you can move on to the next one. Just keep in mind that when you're shopping for a flute, it's similar to a car that you need to try it out before you buy it, but you don't want to focus too hard on whether or not it's an open hole or closed hole or inline or offset. What you really want to focus on is the quality of the metal and what is your purpose for buying it. If you're going to be in a world famous orchestra, then you're going to probably play one that's more expensive than the one that I have. But a good quality flute, meaning it's made of quality materials like silver or gold, that's also going to have an effect on the resonance. The first flute that I showed you, the Prelude by Selmer, this is completely plated. So this flute's actually made of nickel, which means it's a lot lighter of a flute as well. Whereas the Yamaha 481 is quite a bit heavier because this is actually mostly made of silver, and I actually have a gold plated lip plate. It wasn't necessary for me. This can be helpful if you're someone whose lips are actually allergic to silver or other cheaper metals. A gold lip plate can certainly help with that. It was just the one that was available to me when I was shopping. The other thing that you might want to consider too is whether or not you're going to need the B foot. So just as a little side part here, you're also going to need to know whether or not you are playing a flute with a C foot, meaning the lowest note you can play is middle C on the piano, or if the last note you're going to be able to play is a low B, so the B below where middle C would be on the piano. So there's 1, 2, 3 on this one. My other flute just had 2. So this adds a little bit of weight to the instrument, which is why you typically only find it on more advanced model flutes. So those are some of the differences between a closed hole flute and open hole flute, some of the reasons why you may find more closed hole beginner flutes and open hole advanced models, and some of the benefits. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're someone who's playing an open hole flute and adjusting to playing with or without plugs, don't worry, it'll take time, but I know that you can do it. Thank you again so much for watching. Remember to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and give us a follow over on Instagram as well. I'll see you right